After selling my company for $32 million, I decided to throw a small celebration dinner at my mansion. My family was there, my son Daniel, his wife Emily, my brother, and a few close friends. I felt proud, but something about Emily's smile that night seemed forced. She laughed at every joke, but her eyes kept glancing at the wine glasses on the table. When the waiter poured the wine, I noticed her hand tremble slightly as she reached for my glass. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. Emily slipping a tiny packet into my wine while pretending to fix her hair. My heart skipped a beat. What was that? Poison? Medicine? I didn't react. I simply kept my eyes on her reflection in the window. She thought I hadn't seen. I smiled and continued my conversation with Daniel, who was bragging about their new house I had helped them buy. Emily raised her glass, offering a toast. "To success and family," she said sweetly. I raised mine too, pretending nothing was wrong. Just before we drank, I casually switched our glasses as I stood up to make a speech. "To loyalty," I said, locking eyes with her. She smiled, maybe thinking she'd won. We all drank. I waited, pretending to enjoy the party, my mind racing. 10 minutes later, Emily began sweating. She clutched her stomach, confused and looking pale. Everyone panicked, except me. I calmly set my glass down and said, "Maybe you should sit down, Emily." She looked terrified, realizing what had just happened. My son rushed to her side, asking what was wrong. I stayed silent, watching. I had spent my whole life building trust and fortune, and tonight it seemed betrayal had joined us at the dinner table.
Emily's hand shook as she tried to stand, her face turning pale as snow. The chatter in the dining room faded into uneasy silence. My son Daniel grabbed her arm, panic flashing in his eyes. "Emily, what's wrong?" She mumbled something, but her voice came out weak, broken. I don't feel so good." Then she collapsed, her wine glass shattering across the marble floor. Everyone rushed toward her. I stayed seated, quietly observing the chaos unfold. Inside, my heart pounded, not from fear, but from the storm of realization. What if I had been the one to drink that? Daniel looked at me, desperate. "Dad, call an ambulance." I nodded, pretending to react, and dialed 911. As I waited, I noticed Emily's purse lying open on the table. Something caught my attention, a small empty packet, identical to the one she had slipped into my wine earlier. I picked it up discreetly and slipped it into my pocket. Minutes later, the paramedics arrived, lifting her onto a stretcher. Daniel followed them out, his face pale and confused. The rest of the guests stood frozen, whispering. I told everyone to go home. "The night's over," I said quietly. When the last car left, I sat alone in the silent dining room, staring at the half-finished glasses of wine. I felt no anger, only a cold sadness. The woman I had welcomed into my family had just tried to end my life. But why? Was it greed, fear, or something deeper? The next morning, Daniel called me from the hospital. "Dad, they said she's stable now," he said, sounding exhausted. "They've found something strange in her blood, a strong sedative mixed with a toxin." I acted surprised. "That's terrible. Do they know how it got there?" There was silence on the other end. "She's saying it was an accident, that she was trying to surprise you with some kind of sleeping powder as a prank. She thought it would be funny." I let out a quiet laugh. "A prank, huh? Expensive joke." He didn't respond. Later that afternoon, 2 detectives showed up at my house. They asked questions: who poured the wine, who sat where, how the evening went. I told them everything. Except one detail. I didn't tell them I switched the glasses. Instead, I said I must have been distracted when Emily got her drink. They nodded, taking notes, thanking me for my cooperation. Before they left, one of them looked at me and said, "Mr. Lawson, you're lucky. Whatever was in that drink, it was strong enough to stop a heart in minutes." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every moment of the dinner, every fake smile, every soft laugh Emily gave. I remembered how she had begged me months ago to put Daniel's name on one of my properties, how she often asked about my will, and how she smiled too quickly when I mentioned my bank accounts. I ignored it all, because she was family, because I believed love made people better. But I was wrong. The next morning, I went to the hospital. Emily was sitting up in bed, her eyes heavy but sharp. Daniel looked relieved to see me. "Dad, she wants to apologize," he said softly. Emily forced a weak smile. "I made a mistake. I was drunk. I didn't mean to." I cut her off. "Save it," I said calmly. "You don't put things into someone's glass by accident." Daniel looked between us, confused. "Dad, what are you talking about?" I looked directly at Emily. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You tried to poison me." Her eyes widened, tears forming, but I could see the fear behind them. She whispered, "You can't prove anything." I smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but the packet I took from your purse might tell a different story." Daniel's jaw dropped. "You what?" Emily froze, speechless. I pulled the small packet from my pocket and set it on the table beside her. "The police already have a sample," I lied. "They'll run tests." She started crying, shaking her head, trying to grab Daniel's hand, but he pulled away. "Emily, tell me this isn't true." She sobbed harder. "I didn't want to hurt him. I just wanted to scare him a little, to get his attention, to make him give us what's ours." The words hit me like a knife. "What's yours?" I repeated. "Everything you have came from me. The house, the car, your lifestyle, all of it. And this is how you repay me?" Emily broke down completely, confessing through tears that she'd felt jealous, that she thought I'd cut them out of the inheritance after selling my company. "You're too controlling," she cried. "You never trusted us." I took a deep breath. "And now you've proven I was right not to." I stood up and looked at my son. "Daniel, you decide what happens next. But as of today, you're both out of my will." Then I turned to leave. Daniel didn't stop me. Behind me, I heard him whisper, his voice trembling, "Dad, I'm so sorry." I paused at the door. "Don't apologize for her mistakes. Learn from them." When I reached home, I poured myself a glass of wine, the same brand from that night, and looked out the window at the sunset. I realized money changes people. It reveals who they really are. I used to think success brought happiness, but that night I learned the truth. It only makes you see who never really loved you in the first place.
The next few days were quiet, almost too quiet. Daniel didn't call, and I didn't reach out either. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Every time I sat in my study, the memory of that night replayed like a movie I couldn't pause. Emily's trembling hands, Daniel's confused face, the glass of wine glinting under the chandelier, it all kept haunting me. I started wondering if I'd been too harsh, but then I'd remember the cold look in Emily's eyes when she slipped that packet into my drink, the calmness of her movements. That wasn't a mistake. That was intent. Still, Daniel was my only son. I couldn't lose him completely. 3 days later, he showed up at my door. He looked tired, older somehow, like he hadn't slept in days. "Dad," he said softly, "can we talk?" I stepped aside and let him in. He sat down on the couch, fidgeting with his hands. "Emily's gone," he said after a moment. "She left last night, took her things and left a note. She said she couldn't face me after what she did." I nodded slowly, saying nothing. "She also said she's sorry for everything. She wanted you to know that." I stared at the floor. "Sorry doesn't erase poison, son." He sighed. "I know, I don't even know who she was anymore." I looked at him carefully. "Do you?" He looked up and his eyes red. "I thought I did. She changed after the money came in, always asking about your accounts, your will.
I told her to stop, but she said she was worried we'd get nothing. I thought she was just anxious. I placed my hand on his shoulder. You wanted to protect her, and that's admirable. But protecting the wrong person can destroy you. He nodded, wiping his eyes. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The house felt colder than usual. Finally, I stood up and walked over to the cabinet where I kept my old business files. I pulled out a brown envelope and placed it on the table. Daniel frowned. "What's that?" I looked him in the eye. "Your future. I was going to give it to you anyway, but not as inheritance, something you'll earn." Inside were documents for a new project, an investment fund I'd been quietly planning. If you want to rebuild your life, here's your chance. Work for it. Prove yourself. Don't depend on anyone else's fortune, including mine. He stared at me, speechless. "You'd still trust me with this, after everything?" I nodded. "You didn't poison me, Daniel. You made a mistake falling for someone who saw love as a transaction. You deserve a chance to fix your life." He stood up, tears in his eyes, and hugged me for the first time in years. "Thank you, Dad. I won't let you down." For the first time since that night, I felt something shift inside me, a flicker of hope, fragile but real. After he left, I poured myself another glass of wine, this time without fear. The house was still, the ticking of the clock echoing through the hall. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights below. Somewhere out there, Emily was alone, facing the weight of her choices. And though part of me wanted revenge, another part wondered if she was truly evil or just broken by greed and fear. I sighed, closing the curtain. The night wasn't over. Not for her, not for me. There were still truths left buried. And I had a feeling this story wasn't done revealing them. Because sometimes the real poison isn't in the wine. It's in the hearts of those we trust the most.
A week passed after Daniel's visit, and for the first time in years, my house felt alive again. He had started working on the new project with a kind of focus I hadn't seen in him before. Every evening he'd call, update me, and sometimes even come over for dinner. It felt like we were rebuilding something that money had once broken. But even as things began to heal, a strange unease lingered in the back of my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily. Where had she gone? Was she truly gone? There was no word from her, no calls, no messages. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. But people don't just disappear, not when they've done something like that. One night, as I was locking the front door, I noticed something on the porch. A white envelope. No name, no address. Just sitting there like it had been placed deliberately. My heart started beating faster. I picked it up, slowly opened it. Inside was a single folded note. The handwriting was delicate, unmistakably hers. It said, "You switched the glasses. Smart. But did you ever wonder who told me what to mix?" My hands froze. My breath caught in my throat. What did she mean by that? I reread the line again and again. Someone told her what to mix? Someone helped her? My mind raced through possibilities. Could it be one of the guests at dinner? My brother? My business partner? Or Daniel? No, it couldn't be him. He had been genuinely shocked that night. Or was he? The thought sent a chill down my spine. I sat down, trying to piece things together. Emily was manipulative, yes, but she wasn't a chemist. She couldn't have come up with something that potent on her own. Someone must have guided her. Someone who knew enough about the compound to make it deadly yet undetectable. And there was only one person I had ever shared that kind of detail with. Daniel. Years ago, I had told him about a failed business experiment involving chemical preservation in wine bottles. Could it be possible he remembered that? Could Emily have used it against me with his unintentional help? The thought twisted my stomach. I tried to push it away, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Emily wasn't smart enough to pull that off alone. There had to be someone behind her. Maybe not Daniel directly, but someone close to him. The next day, I asked one of my old security contacts to trace Emily's bank activity. 2 days later, he called back. "Mr. Lawson, you might want to sit down for this. There was a withdrawal from one of your joint business accounts 2 days before your dinner party. $50,000. Transferred to an account under Emily's name." I frowned. "Joint account? With who?" "Your son," he said quietly. My heart sank. I hung up, staring into space. The room suddenly felt darker. I wanted to believe it wasn't true. Maybe Emily convinced him to transfer it. Maybe he didn't know what she'd use it for. But deep down, something inside me whispered that it wasn't just her plan. Maybe he knew. Maybe he played his part and regretted it only after it went wrong. That evening, Daniel came over again, all smiles, talking about business progress. I watched him carefully, every gesture, every word. He seemed genuine, but now I knew better than to trust appearances. I poured 2 glasses of wine and handed him one. "To rebuilding," I said. He raised his glass, smiling. "To second chances." We drank. The silence between us was warm but heavy. My eyes drifted toward him, searching for guilt, for hesitation, for anything. He noticed my stare. "Something wrong, Dad?" I smiled faintly. "Just thinking," I said, "about how easily trust can be broken and how hard it is to earn it back." He nodded slowly. "I know. I'll spend my life earning it back if I have to." I looked down at my glass, swirling the deep red liquid inside. "Let's hope you get the chance to." He didn't understand what I meant, not yet. And maybe neither did I. Because sometimes life has a cruel way of revealing the truth, not through words, but through silence, through the spaces between what's said and what's hidden. That night, as Daniel left, I stood by the window watching him walk down the driveway, a faint doubt still gnawing at my heart. Somewhere, far away, Emily might be watching too. And for the first time, I wasn't sure who the real danger was. The woman who tried to poison me, or the son who might have given her the recipe.
The next morning, I couldn't shake off the unease. That note kept replaying in my mind like a whisper I couldn't silence. Who told me what to mix? Those words haunted me every second. I didn't know if it was a confession, a threat, or just another twisted game. Daniel called again that afternoon, cheerful as ever, telling me about new investors he'd met. His tone was light, but there was something forced behind it, like he was trying too hard to sound normal. When he hung up, I sat there, staring at the phone, thinking of every time he'd asked about my will, every time Emily had brought up money in front of him, and the way he never stopped her. Maybe he didn't plan it, but he knew something. I decided to test him. That evening, I invited him for dinner again, just the two of us. He arrived with a bottle of the same wine we'd had that night. "I thought we could celebrate again," he said with a grin. "You know, a fresh start." I smiled and nodded, hiding the storm inside me. We sat at the table, eating quietly, the ticking clock filling the silence between bites. Then, halfway through dinner, I asked, "Do you ever hear from Emily?" He froze for a second, before replying, "No, not since you left. I don't think I ever will." His eyes shifted slightly, avoiding mine. "Why?" I shrugged. "Just curious. People don't usually disappear without a trace, especially not when they have secrets." He looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" I leaned back in my chair. "Someone left a note on my porch. From her." His face changed. Just a flicker, but enough. "What did it say?" he asked quickly. "It said she wasn't working alone." For a second, everything went still. The air between us felt thick, heavy. He tried to smile. "Dad, come on, you really think—" I interrupted, that she wasn't smart enough to come up with that plan alone. Someone helped her. Someone who knew enough about chemistry. Someone close. His jaw tightened. "You think that was me?" I didn't answer. He pushed his chair back slightly, his voice shaking. "You're paranoid. You think everyone wants your money. That's why Mom left, remember?" The mention of her name hit me like a slap. I hadn't heard him bring up his mother in years. I stayed silent. He continued, his tone rising. "You've always controlled everything, my life, my choices, even who I married. Maybe if you treated her better, none of this would have happened." I looked him straight in the eye. "So, you admit something happened?" He froze. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The silence that followed was suffocating. He looked down, whispering, "I didn't know she'd go that far. She said it would just make you sick for a few hours, scare you. That's all." My hands trembled, not from anger this time, but heartbreak. I asked, "And you agreed?" He looked up, eyes glistening. "I thought, maybe if you got scared, you'd finally start trusting me. You'd hand things over, retire, live easy. I never thought she'd use poison." I leaned forward, my voice cold. "You never thought. That's your problem, Daniel. You don't think, you let others do it for you." He buried his face in his hands. "I'm sorry, Dad. I swear I didn't want this." I stood up slowly, walking toward the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered like distant stars. "You betrayed me, son, not for greed, but for weakness. And weakness is far more dangerous." He said nothing. When I turned back, I saw tears in his eyes. He looked smaller somehow, broken. "Tell me what you want me to do. I'll do anything." I looked at him for a long moment before answering. "I want the truth, Daniel. The whole truth. Who bought the toxin, who planned the timing, everything. You tell me that, and maybe, just maybe, you'll still have a father left." He nodded slowly, defeated. "I'll tell you everything, but you might not want to hear it." And then he began to talk. Daniel sat there for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the table as if the truth was carved into the wood itself. Then he finally spoke, his voice low and trembling. "It started months before the dinner," he said. "Emily was always anxious about money. She said you were planning to leave everything to charity. She showed me an email, something about a foundation you were creating." I frowned. That was true. I had discussed it with my lawyer, but never told anyone else. "How did she get that email?" I asked sharply. "I don't know," Daniel said quickly. "She said one of your assistants mentioned it. She said it wasn't fair, that after everything you built, your own family would get nothing. She cried, said we'd end up with nothing after you were gone." He rubbed his temples. "At first, I ignored her, but then she started talking to someone, some man online. She said he was helping her plan things. I thought it was harmless. She said he knew how to handle chemicals, that he worked in a lab. She said it was just for a prank, a little scare to make you see how fragile life is." I clenched my fists. "What was his name?" "I don't know," Daniel said quickly. "She never told me, but after the dinner, I checked her phone. The messages were gone, deleted. The number was international." I paced across the room. My heart was pounding. "So, she was working with someone," I murmured. Daniel nodded slowly. "I think so. And I think he knew about you, your company, your habits, everything." I stopped and turned toward him. "You're saying someone targeted me through her?" He hesitated. "Maybe. But Dad, what if that someone was from your past? Someone you worked with? Someone who wanted revenge?" The words hit me harder than I expected. My mind flashed back years, to the deal that almost destroyed my company, the business partner who'd lost everything when I refused to bail him out. His name was Victor Hale.
Smart, ruthless, and vindictive. He had threatened me once, said, "You'll lose what you love most one day." Could it be him? Had he found a way to get to me after all these years? I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "You think it's Victor?" I whispered. Daniel frowned. "Who's Victor?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked to my office and pulled out an old file cabinet. Inside were the contracts, the lawsuit papers, the bitter reminders of that war we fought 2 decades ago. At the bottom of the stack was a letter that I'd kept for reasons I never understood, a letter from Victor, dated 12 years ago, saying, "If I can't destroy your empire, I'll destroy your peace." My hands trembled slightly as I handed the paper to Daniel. He read it silently, his expression changing from confusion to fear. "You think he's behind this?" he asked. "I could be," I said quietly. "He knows my routines, my weaknesses. He knew Emily was the emotional crack in this family. Maybe he found her online, manipulated her, used her to get to me." Daniel stood up, pacing now. "So what do we do? Go to the police?" I shook my head. "Not yet. We don't have proof. Just suspicions." I sat down again, staring at the letter. We wait, we watch, and if Victor's really behind this, he'll make another move. There was silence for a long time. Then Daniel said, almost in a whisper, "Dad, what if he already has?" I looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out another letter. "This came to my office yesterday. No return address, no signature, just this." He handed it to me. The handwriting was elegant, almost mocking. It said, "Round 1 was a warning. Round 2 will take something you can't replace." I stared at the paper, the words burning into my mind. "He's playing a game," I said under my breath. Daniel's voice shook. "And we're the pieces." I folded the letter and looked out the window, the city lights flickering like tiny fires in the dark. For the first time in years, I felt truly afraid. Not for my fortune, not even for my life, but for what might come next. Because if Victor was really back, he wouldn't stop at threats. He'd make sure the poison wasn't just in my wine next time, but in everything I loved, everyone I trusted. And maybe it had already begun. That night, I barely slept. The words from Victor's letter kept echoing in my mind. "Round 2 will take something you can't replace." It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker, every shadow outside feeling like a ghost from the past. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Still drinking wine alone, Charles?" My chest tightened. No name, no context, but I knew that tone. It was him, Victor. I typed back, "What do you want?" No reply came, but a few seconds later I heard a soft sound from outside, a car engine idling near the gate. I walked quietly to the security monitor. A black sedan was parked just beyond the driveway, lights off. Someone was sitting inside, watching the house. My heartbeat quickened. I called Daniel immediately. "Don't ask questions," I said, "just get here." 20 minutes later, he pulled up, half-dressed, confusion written across his face. "Dad, what's going on?" I pointed to the screen. The car was gone. "He was here," I said. "Victor." Daniel frowned. "You sure it's him?" I nodded. "He knows too much. He's watching. He's not done." We went through the footage from the security cameras, and there it was, at exactly 1:47 a.m., a tall figure standing at the gate, wearing a dark coat and a cap, face turned away from the camera. He stood there for 30 seconds, then slipped a small envelope under the gate before disappearing into the shadows. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The envelope was still there, half soaked from the dew. I opened it slowly. Inside was a photograph. Me, Daniel, and Emily, taken the night before the poisoning. The back of the photo had just 2 words written in neat handwriting: family games. Daniel stared at it, horrified. "He's toying with us," he whispered. I nodded, my mind racing. He wants us scared. He wants control. Daniel clenched his fists. "Then we take it back." His words sparked something in me, something I hadn't felt in years: defiance. I looked at him. "If Victor wants a game, we'll play, but on our terms." The next morning I called an old friend, Evan, a retired federal investigator who owed me a favor. I told him everything, from Emily's poisoning to the letters. He listened quietly before saying, "If this is Victor Hale, he won't stop. He's methodical, patient, and dangerous. You'll need to draw him out." "How?" I asked. "By pretending to fall for it," he replied. "Make him think he's winning." That night, Daniel and I sat in the study, planning. "He's after your piece," Daniel said. "So what if we take that bait, announce something, public, big, something that'll force him to show his hand?" I thought for a moment. "A charity gala," I said, "in my name. It'll make him think I'm celebrating again. He won't be able to resist." Daniel nodded. "And we'll be ready for him." For the next few days we worked quietly, arranging the event, inviting familiar faces. Everything looked genuine, but behind the smiles and champagne was a silent plan, a trap. Hidden cameras were installed, security guards disguised as waiters, and Evan's contacts from law enforcement would be nearby. Yet, despite all the preparations, I couldn't shake a feeling deep inside me. Something was still off. Victor was always one step ahead. He didn't play games he couldn't win. What if he already knew what we were planning? What if the real trap wasn't ours, but his? The night of the gala arrived. The mansion buzzed with laughter, music, and flashing lights. Daniel stood beside me, wearing a calm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Every face in the crowd looked normal, yet I kept scanning, waiting for that one person who didn't belong. Hours passed. Nothing happened. I started to think maybe, just maybe, Victor wasn't coming. But then, right before midnight, one of the waiters approached me with a silver tray. He said, "A gift, sir, from a guest." I frowned, lifting the lid. Inside was a single glass of red wine with a note beneath it: "For old time's sake." My hand went cold. Daniel saw my face and whispered, "Dad." I didn't respond. I just stared at the glass. The crowd around us laughed and clinked glasses, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing at the center of the room. I picked up the note again. There was something written on the back, faint but visible under the light. "You took 1 life from me years ago. Now I'll take 2. I looked up sharply, scanning the room, and for a split second, I saw him. Victor Hale, standing at the far end of the hall, half in shadow, watching me with a faint smile. And then, just as I blinked, he turned and vanished into the crowd.
For a few seconds, I stood frozen. The crowd kept laughing, unaware that death was dancing among them. Daniel followed my gaze, but Victor was gone, swallowed by tuxedos and glitter. My breathing turned shallow, my palms damp. "He's here," I whispered. Daniel tensed instantly. "Then we end this tonight." We split up. Daniel went toward the back exit while I moved through the guests, every nerve on fire. I brushed past people, smiling, toasting, completely blind to the storm about to break. I reached the corridor behind the ballroom, empty, dimly lit, with faint music echoing through the walls. My footsteps sounded too loud, like the mansion itself was holding its breath. Then I saw it. Another envelope, taped to the wall beside the wine cellar. I tore it open. Inside was a small photo of Emily, my daughter-in-law, lying in a hospital bed. The back read, "Your glass, my design." Switch again and watch your son die." My blood ran cold. He knew. He'd been watching everything, even that first night when I switched glasses. "No," I muttered, clutching the note. Suddenly, a voice behind me. "Looking for me, Charles?" I turned slowly. Victor Hale stepped out of the shadows, calm, composed, like a ghost that had waited decades for this moment. His eyes gleamed with quiet fury. "You always were predictable," he said, still pretending to be the hero. I stared at him, my mind spinning. "What do you want, Victor?" He smiled bitterly. "Justice." He began to walk closer. 30 years ago, my wife worked for your company. She died in that fire. Everyone said it was an accident, but you and I know better. You cut corners, saved money, and she paid with her life." I swallowed hard. That wasn't me. I didn't even know. "You signed the papers," he roared, his composure cracking for the first time. "You built your empire on blood." I felt my throat tighten. "And you think killing my family makes it right?" "Not right," he said softly. "Balanced." Before I could move, he pulled a small vial from his coat and dropped it into a half-empty glass of wine sitting nearby. "One sip," he whispered, "and Daniel will join her." "You don't have to do this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It won't bring her back." He tilted his head. "Maybe not, but it'll make you feel what I felt, the helplessness, the loss." He handed me the glass. "Drink it yourself, and he lives. Or refuse, and I'll find him first." For a heartbeat, time froze. I looked at the glass, then at him. "You think you're teaching me a lesson," I said quietly, "but all you've done is become the thing you hate." His jaw tightened. "And what are you, Charles? A saint?" "No," I said, slowly raising the glass. "Just a father." He hesitated, realizing what I was about to do. "Don't," he said, stepping forward, but I drank. The bitterness hit my tongue instantly, burning like acid. I dropped the glass, coughing, pain shooting through my chest. Victor's face turned pale. "You idiot! It wasn't supposed to—" But before he could finish, Daniel appeared at the doorway, gun drawn. "Dad!" he shouted, running forward. Victor spun, reaching into his coat, but Daniel fired first. The echo shook the hallway. Victor stumbled, fell against the wall, sliding down slowly, blood staining his shirt. He looked up at me, eyes full of something between rage and sorrow. "You, already dying," he whispered. I fell to my knees, my vision blurring. Daniel's voice distant. "Stay with me, Dad. Stay with me." Everything dimmed. For a moment I saw flashes, Emily smiling, Daniel as a boy, my wife laughing in the garden. Then darkness. But fate had other plans. When I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed, Daniel was there, asleep beside me. The doctor said the poison had been diluted, not lethal, thanks to the quick injection of the antidote carried by the undercover agents Evan had stationed nearby. Victor hadn't known. His own rage had made him careless. Daniel opened his eyes when I stirred. "You're alive," he whispered, relief breaking through tears. "Barely," I said with a faint smile, "but maybe that's enough." He nodded slowly. "Victor's gone. The police confirmed he didn't make it." I closed my eyes. Then maybe it's over. But deep inside, I knew something. The story wouldn't end with his death, because monsters like Victor aren't born out of nowhere. They're created by people like me, by greed, by mistakes, by the lies we tell ourselves to sleep at night. Months later, the gala video leaked online. People speculated, reporters swarmed, but Daniel and I said nothing. Emily recovered, the business was shut down, and I retired quietly to the countryside. Every evening, I sat by the porch, looking at the sunset, wondering if I'd truly made peace, or if I was just living inside Victor's final victory. One evening a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a small, unmarked bottle and a note that read simply, "For when peace feels too quiet." I stared at it for a long time, then walked to the edge of the field and poured the contents into the earth. The soil hissed softly, then fell silent. I turned toward the setting sun and whispered, "It ends here." And for the first time in years, I meant it.